Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Regular Guy Vikings Hour. I'm so happy that you've decided to join me once again. If you haven't had a chance, please go back, check out previous videos. I know that a game has already been played and some of those old talking points really don't matter right now, but if you want to have a chance to find out what I'm all about and what this channel is all about, there's also an intro video. I do hope that you have a chance to go back and just give it a listen and just see kind of like what I'm trying to build here. And just on that note, please give me a thumbs up, please give me a subscription if you like what I'm doing here as I try and just build this brand and build this channel. I love talking about the Vikings. I love talking about the NFL and gambling on it a little bit and just things of that sort. And so if you're into that, then you're in the right place. So right off the bat, last week, I think I recorded on Tuesday, I talked about how I was actually going to give you a Thursday show and then also a Saturday show. So it's Saturday now. I'm giving you the Saturday show. I'm going to talk Vikings and I'm going to preview the 49ers game. I didn't get around to the Thursday show. I apologize for that. I have a ton of notes, though. I have probably more than one show's worth of stuff that I want to talk about. And so I've got all those prepped. So I'm definitely going to give you that next week. So just look out for that, okay? And then finally, fortunately, this is actually my first time recording this, so no worries, no audio issues this time. But I did notice on my previous recordings that my volume kind of went down a little bit when I was switching over to like looking at the spreadsheets and the browsers and stuff. So for this episode, we're just going to go main cam the whole time. So, and just while we're watching, hey, check out the new hat, right? Plaid, it looks good, right? Anyway, first things first, okay, just a couple of little notes regarding money, which is we got a little Hawk restructure, and it was one of those restructures where they don't actually have to get an okay from the player. They can just restructure and just move the this year's cap hit down to a base, and then take that the bonus and then space that out over the remainder of the years. And so they created a little bit of cap space from doing that Hawk restructure. And then in addition to that, we also saw the Harrison Phillips 2-year extension earlier in the week, and I noticed that his cap number also came down a little bit. So that actually has us now currently, just according to Spot Track, we're 14th in the league. We've got 15 million in space, and then looking forward into 2025, we're actually 6th. With 81 million in space, covering 39 players currently under contract. So that's where we're at there. So the first thing I want to get to in this episode before I talk about the game is the Ed Ingram slander that I listened to all week long. And listen, I'm not saying Ed's great, but for the way that he was talked about all week long, and this 9.3 pass block grade that he got from PFF, I just find it a little bit insulting, frankly. And so I just want to kind of go through that. So yeah, 9.3 from PFF, 28 reps. He was the lowest out of 67 qualifying guards. The next lowest guy had a 17.4. And then just to contextualize that, in the run game, he was a lot better. He was a 63.9 run block grade in 27 reps. And that was 37th out of 67 guys. And that, that also shows the balance we had in that game, right? 28 throws, 27 runs. Anyway, so PFF had Ed down for 6 total pressures, okay? I counted 4. Now, first and foremost, the guy he was going up against, his name is Dexter Lawrence, okay? And he is basically the best defensive tackle in all of football. And I know how I was kind of like dragging down PFF's grades just a second ago talking about Ed, but again, I still like what they do. I still think there is credence to what they do. So anyway, getting back on topic, Dexter Lawrence actually was graded out as the second and the first overall qualifying defensive lineman over the past 2 seasons. And he made second team All-Pro both years, and he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I mean, literally, when it comes to a defensive lineman or a defensive tackle, you can't do any better than Dexter Lawrence. So Ed was literally going up against the creme de la creme of the league, okay? So let's cut Ed a little bit of slack here. So right off the bat, he had 6 one-on-one matchups against Dexter Lawrence, mano-a-mano. And for me, I categorized them like this. I had 3 that I would say he did good, 1 that was bad, that was the sack. I had 1 that what I would call good enough, where by the time Darnold hit and I'll detail this play a little bit more, but by the time Darnold hit his back foot, there was still 3 yards of separation between where Lawrence was and where Darnold was, and Lawrence ends up getting a hit on Darnold, and I think that counted as one of Ingram's pressures. But Darnold just held onto that ball way too long on that particular snap, and so I don't really see that one as being Ed's fault. So I have that one down as good enough. Okay, so that's 5. Then the other one was what I consider a screwed up play, where somehow Darnold screwed up the play. It was supposed to be a screen to Jones to the left. The entire line stopped blocking at some point. The pocket collapsed on Darnold. He ended up escaping and scrambling for like 3 or 4 yards. Darisaw was 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage. Would have been called for illegal down the field had Darnold actually thrown the ball. So again, if he got a pressure on that play, again, I gotta say, like, not cool, not fair. So anyway, here's where we're at. We're gonna get to. So I talked about that. We're going to get to the actual plays themselves. And just kind of like a side note here, and that's this. Who are we clamoring for here? Dan Feeney? Michael Juergens? I mean, if you look, Dan Feeney has been a backup for a majority of his career. When he was a starter, he wasn't that great. He probably played at a lower level than Ingram is right now. Michael Juergens is a rookie who looked up and down during his all of his snaps during the preseason. And I mean, frankly, I don't think he's ready. And to come in at right guard, a position I'm not even sure he's played, maybe in college, I'd have to go check his snaps. But frankly, I think, what are we clamoring for here, right? Like, what are the alternatives? Really, the only thing, if Tyrese Robinson were on the 53 and he were available to step in for Ingram right away, I'd be okay with that. Because I think Tyrese Robinson potentially is a better guard than Ingram right now, but they didn't put him on the 53. So, and I saw that the 2 call-ups we have are Jonah Williams and Myles Gaskin. Neither one of those are Tyrese Robinson, so Tyrese isn't going to get to play. So I would rather have Ingram play than Feeney or Juergens at right guard. So anyway, so that's where we're at with that. So let's get down to these 6 plays, okay? Or actually, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I actually have 8 plays here. 4 of which I say no pressure, 4 of which I say yes pressure. Okay, we're going to start off with the first one, which was with 12:16 to go. This is actually the first drive, and I'll admit this much. Okay, and to be honest with you, this isn't even... I'm not an Ingram defender typically. His first 2 years in the league drove me nuts. The way that he had a penchant for just being a turnstile and allowing a guy to just bulldoze Cousins in the worst possible situations, like on 3rd downs or in the red zone. I mean, it had me screaming that I wanted Ingram out of the game. Somebody replace this guy. So this is coming from a guy who's just like, oh, I'm gung-ho for Ed Ingram. I didn't think that the talk this week and that the PFF grade was fair by any means. So Ingram started off rough. Okay, I totally get that. The first drive, right? 3 plays. It was bad. Okay, so with 12:16 to go in the first quarter, there was a sack. Lawrence owned him. Boom, there's one. The very next play, which was the 3rd play of the drive, that was the one that got dumped off to Ham that he fumbled, was with 11:31 in the first quarter. That was actually a double team. Okay, Ingram and Bradbury tried to double team Lawrence, didn't work out. And I would say it's difficult to assign a pressure to one particular guy when a guy's splitting a double team. This actually happened twice in this game. On this occasion, I gave 1 to Ingram, I gave 1 to Bradbury. On this occasion, I feel like this one was on Ingram. He definitely let up the most ground. Lawrence kind of bulldozed him, made his way to Darnold, forcing the dump off. So I would say yes, although there was no hit on the play, so Lawrence did not get a hit on Darnold on this play. But I would say yes, that was her pressure number 2, okay? The third one that I watched was with 6:51 to go in the first quarter. Okay, that was the botched play. That was the one where they had Aaron Jones lined up over to the left. It was going to be what you would call a typical wide receiver screen, except you're using our running back in this case. And it was so obvious to me that this play was botched because, number one, you had Darisaw releasing down the field. He was 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage by the time Darnold even hit his back foot, so to speak. Bradbury kind of chipped a little bit longer than you'd think, though, for a guy trying to get out on a screen. But he chipped and went to go release. The rest of the line kind of stopped, maybe blocking with full intent after a certain point because they thought the ball would be gone. You saw the entire pocket collapse around Darnold, and then Darnold ends up escaping and scrambling for a few yards. So all I'm saying is that it would be disingenuous, in my opinion, to give Ingram a pressure on a play like that, because clearly that was Darnold's fault. That play was on Darnold. So there's 3. I don't have that as a pressure. Okay, next one up. This might be the same drive, a couple plays down the road. With 5:32 to go in the first quarter, Kayvon Thibodeau actually gets a pressure on Darnold. Okay, there's no hit though; he just got a hand in his face. But frankly, what I saw in that play was that Ingram initiated with Lawrence, okay, who then got passed off to O'Neal. O'Neal took Lawrence. Then, as Bradbury was being demolished by number 94, whoever that is, basically Bradbury and 94's body pin Ingram in between O'Neal and Lawrence. And then Thibodeau actually sees this and stunts around that whole crowd and comes around and actually gets a hand up in Darnold's face, which I think may have counted as a pressure for Thibodeau. Who you give that to, I don't know. I wouldn't give that to Ingram, though, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I actually don't know what happened on that play, but I digress. So anyway, we're moving on to the next play. So that's a no pressure, so we're still at 2. Okay, the next one I've got with 7:41 to go in the second quarter. This is what I would call, this is the one I called good enough, I believe, which was he gave gradual ground to Lawrence. He was one-on-one with Dexter Lawrence. So when Darnold hits his back foot, there's like 3 yards of separation. Ingram is still in front of Lawrence, and there's 3 yards of separation between where Darnold is ready to throw the ball and where Lawrence is, okay? The release, I counted it from the time it hit his hands until he released it at about 2.6 to 2.7 seconds, which is like maybe just a quarter of a second too long, but it may have been just enough. And then with Lawrence just being the great player that he is, he actually got a hit on Darnold. And to be honest with you, the hit looked just a tad bit late, but it wasn't so late that he would get a flag, and he didn't. And so I just think maybe that was just kind of veteran savvy on his part, where he knew he was close enough to get a hit on Darnold and not get the flag for it, and ended up being the case. So obviously PFF counted that as a pressure. That had to have been one of the 6. I'll go ahead and mark that down as well, although I got to be honest, I kind of sort of put that one a little bit, I'll put it like half Ed, half Darnold. So anyway, moving on to the next one. We've got 3:01 left in the second quarter. This is when, this is not against Lawrence. Ingram's actually going against 98. And again, I don't know the guy's name. I don't know the Giants defensive lineman names other than the great one, right? So this guy clearly gets away with a defensive hold. Clearly. And the Giants actually do this twice in this game. I think it was 98 both times. So clearly this, and you know what? I actually do remember his name. It was DJ Davidson. He's a young guy. And what he did was he literally grabbed Ingram's jersey and pulls him to the ground. So that you see Ingram on the ground, and then this 98 Davidson, he gets his hand in Darnold's face. There's no hit on the play. The play ends up being an outlet pass to Jones. But I would say it can be difficult to call defensive linemen holds. And the second one, I'm actually like, okay, that one I wouldn't call. But on this occasion, where he clearly has both hands on his jersey and pulls him to the ground right in front of him, that to me is a pretty egregious hold on the defensive lineman. And I think we ended up gaining some yards in that play. So even if it had been called, I think we probably would have declined it. But fact of the matter is, that was a missed call. For my money, I would not put that as a pressure on Ingram because of the clear defensive hold. So the next one up is with 12:13 to go in the third quarter. This is it. This is the next one. Yet again, 98 grabs Ed. Now this time he was much more savvy about it. Maybe the coaches talked to him a little bit like, hey, you're probably not going to get away with that again. On this occasion, he had his hands inside the shoulder pads, right? Which I think is also a legal hold for offensive linemen to do as well, as long as they don't hold on for too long. On this occasion, this guy grabs him inside the shoulder pads by the jersey and literally just tosses him to the side. So he made Ed look kind of like a ragdoll on that one. So clearly a bad look for Ed. I think that that play made him look weak or just, not strong. And so I just think it was a matter of losing his balance, not having leverage, and 98 just kind of getting the better of him on that one. And so this is something to look out for too, I think, because I think defensive lineman, maybe there's a book on Ed that if you get him off balance, you can pull this kind of a move. So what I'm hoping is that Ed is aware of this and keep these defensive linemen's hands off of his jersey so that they can't pull this move with him, because apparently I would say unless it's super egregious, the refs are probably just going to let that go. So for that one, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, that's another pressure. So I have him at the 4. That's my 4th one. Now, there actually was a pressure with a hit on that play, although ironically the play ended up being a touchdown to Jalen Naylor, so it didn't even matter. But the final play that I saw was with 10-10 to go in the 4th quarter. This was another occasion where Lawrence split the double team. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a double team with Ingram and Bradbury, except in this case, Bradbury was the one that got demolished. And it looked bad on Ed because Bradbury just goes flying away. Lawrence loops around Ingram as he's trying to help, because he's assuming Bradbury is going to have leverage on his side. So Ed's just trying to pin Lawrence between the two of them, but Bradbury completely loses whatever leverage he had, and then Lawrence just continues on his route right around Ingram, because Ingram didn't have him straight up, he had him from the side. And so even though Ingram ends up kind of chasing on the play, and he looks like the culprit because he's kind of chasing after Lawrence as Lawrence is going after Darnold, that one's on Bradbury for me. So I don't give Ed a pressure on that one. So anyway, and this was, this one did have a little bit of a bad look because it was a 3rd down. I think we were up by quite a bit. We were trying to get a 1st down, kill the clock. It was a short pass to the left out to Jets. He dropped the ball. But anyway, fortunately, other than I would say maybe the first drive, which of course you're trying to build momentum, a lot of these plays didn't end up hurting the team directly and didn't happen in really crucial situations. So again, that ends the Ed Ingram stuff. But basically, to take away from that performance a 9.7 grade and make him the absolute worst guard in pass protection in week 1, no. I'm sorry, just no. So anyway, that concludes Ed Ingram talk. I expect we're playing against Javon Hargrave. And I think the Hargrave is probably going to be lining up in the same spot as Lawrence typically does. So I think that we're going to see Ingram getting a lot of one-on-ones with Hargrave in this game. And Hargrave is, right now, he's living more on name than he is actually playing ability. Okay, his best season, at least recently, was his free agent season with the Eagles, and that was when the Niners gave him that big contract. He wasn't really great last year. I think he was somewhere in the top 3rd, but not dominant by any means. And then again this year in week 1, so far anyway, he didn't have a great game 1. So I look for Ed Ingram to have a bounce back game and to look solid against Hargrave. So I'm going to go ahead and make that prediction now. Okay, so moving on. I want to kind of predict the inactives, although I didn't really, go through my spreadsheet. So I can't really go through it one by one, but I'll say this. I think that again, you're going to have Rippin, right? You're probably going to actually no, with Addison being out now, Tristan Jackson is going to play. And then probably Rouse is going to be out again. And then and Gaskin coming in to do kick returning and stuff, that's something they talked about already. We already knew about that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. What I do have issue with is that Jalen Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez, LDR, neither one of those guys got to play in week 1, and now we're coming into week 2 against a great running team, and then we're calling up Jonah Williams. I take great issue with this because Jonah Williams is light to be playing on the line. He's a tweener, and he's not built the way that Jihad Ward is. Okay, Jihad Ward, he's heavy on the lower half. Okay, he can play on the inside and he can hold up. Jonah Williams is 275. He's kind of a tall, thin guy. If they're going to have him in the game trying to defend the run, he's going to get demolished, okay? And then also, he's heavy for an edge rusher. So I'm not really sure what they see in Jonah Williams. And again, I hate tearing players down. If he proves me wrong, that's great. But I got to tell you, I'm extremely skeptical as to why Jonah Williams is being called up for this game. So it makes it seem relatively clear that once again, we'll be without Jalen Redmond, we'll be without LDR. And I mean, in a game like this against a physical running team, if they have the audacity to sit Taki Taimani in this game, I'm going to be like beside myself. So I'm going to be super interested in these inactives come out. And again, you know, they had all 5 edge guys play last week. They had Asamoah play last week, which I guess he's a special teamer, so like fine, whatever. Caleb, I guess, is playing special teams now, so he's in. And I think maybe I think there's one guy left. I think maybe Fabian Moreau gets into this one. We'll find out. That might be all the guys. Maybe I'm one over. I can't remember. I wished I had gone back and done some more research, but I kind of found myself scrambling a little bit. And then just to talk about the depth charts for just a sec. I don't even know where I made this note, but I've noticed that, and I think I already talked about this earlier, but why in the heck do they have Feeney listed as the backup at center and then Juergens listed as the backup at right guard? So I'm assuming, I guess, that if a Brandell or Bradbury went down, that Feeney would sub in at one of those 2 positions. We saw Feeney play a lot at left guard in the preseason. But then if Ingram goes down and we see Juergens at right guard, I can't understand why Juergens is the guy and not Tyrese Robinson. I'm left with a lot of trepidation, and it's so weird for me to be like, oh my God, Ed, please don't get injured, because, I mean, I don't know what Juergens is going to do if he comes into a game, but I'm a little bit scared of the possibility. So we'll see what happens. Just stay healthy. You know what? Offensive line, all you guys, take all snaps, stay healthy, please. And just one other note that I had about the depth chart was just that I noticed that they continue to list Byron Murphy Jr. as a starting corner on the outside ahead of Shaq Griffin. And again, I just cannot talk about this enough, is that Byron Murphy, if you move him from the slot to the outside, he goes from being a good cornerback to being a very average, if not below average cornerback. Okay, he doesn't have the size to play on the outside. He's not great at playing the ball with his back to the ball. And so, and I think he gets burned a lot on those post routes and stuff like that. So please don't play Murphy on the outside, because if you do, a guy like probably not Ayuk. I think Ayuk will probably be covered by Stephon Gilmore, but a guy like a Juwan Jennings or somebody like that, and I think they have another decent receiver. I don't want Murphy on the outside. Please keep it Stephon and Shaq on the outside. Let Murphy play on the inside, and have a Caleb and Fabian Moreau backing up on the outside. And then you probably have Jay Ward sub in if Murphy were to get dinged up on the inside. It's not necessarily the best situation. Oh my God, I forgot about Debo. So there you go, Debo. So probably Ayuk and Stephon Gilmore, and then you've got, I mean, Debo is usually more of an inside guy anyway, but it's like he's got speed. He can play on the outside. Please, please, please don't put Murphy one-on-one with Debo. That would just, anyway. So, talked about that. So let's do this. We're going to talk the game. We're 23 minutes in. That gives me plenty of time to talk about this game. I'm going to see if I've got my notes here. I had a lot. This is all my stuff for next week. Okay, so let's start off number 1 with this. We know that Jordan Addison's out of the game, okay? And then we also have Harrison Smith, Brian O'Neill, and Ed Ingram is questionable. I think all 3 of those guys are going to play. I know they kind of got nicked up during the week, and it's like, okay, they made it onto the injury report, but I think they'll play. Addison being out, kind of a big deal, and because we really could have used him in this game. And the reason why it hurts a little bit is because last year's game, we did not have Justin Jefferson. So literally, it was the Addison and Hawkinson show. And they were the literal reason why we won the game, other than the defense playing out of their mind. But that, whatever game plan they had installed last year, force-feeding the ball to Addison, force-feeding the ball to Hawkinson, that's out the window now. We have neither one of those guys in this game. And so if you're going to focus on 2 players in this game, to decide whether or not we have a chance at winning this thing or not, we need to get the ball to Jets. We need to get the ball to Aaron Jones. We need to run the ball a lot. The same way we did in week one. Jones needs to be fed that ball a lot. And Darnold needs to be looking Jefferson's way, constantly. Yes, I think Naylor has an opportunity to maybe make a play down the field here and there. In fact, I kind of get the feeling, looking at last year's game, because I went back and watched it, Addison got the better of both Charvarius Ward and Lenore on at least a couple of different occasions. And so I think that if we do some play actions and we run Naylor on some posts, I think he can probably draw a flag or two. And so I hope that Coach KO kind of pulls that rabbit out of the hat. So we'll see if that happens. But I think I would predict it that we're going to get at least one flag down the field, much like we did last week, right? With Addison jumping back into that corner on that prayer ball, which was, again, ironic but cool. I wanted to get into the 49ers defense just a little in that. And I do have here we go. So I want to talk about a couple different things. Number one, the defensive coordinator changed, right? So they went from D'Amico Ryans, who then left to go become coach of the Texans, right? Then they had Steve Wilkes, who I think was, he's been around a long time, a defensive guy. I think he took over during that terrible Carolina Panthers year, if I'm remembering correctly. So anyway, he was a defensive coordinator last year. He only lasted the 1 year. Shanahan made the change. Then they got a guy in here by the name of Nick Sorensen, and just kind of took a look at his Wikipedia page real quick. He's been in the league, in the NFL ranks anyway, for 10 years, and he's just kind of slowly worked his way up the ranks. He's done a little bit of everything on the defensive side, a little bit on special teams. And so he's been in the NFL for 10 years, slowly working his way up the ranks. We don't really know a lot about him or what kind of a style of game he calls. I really only had a chance to watch a little bit of the Jets game. I couldn't really go into a lot of detail. So this is kind of going to be new. We're going to have a brand new game plan going against Sorensen because we really don't know what to expect. Then, I talked about the call-ups. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the defensive players that the 49ers have now, because what I think the 49ers are living on right now is player name recognition and just a general vibe of, oh, they're the 49ers, so clearly they have a good defense, right? But hold on a second. So yes, right off the bat, you do have a handful of stars, okay? You've got Warner, the middle linebacker. You've got Nick Bosa at left end. You've got Charvarius Ward at cornerback, right? In terms of high-end talent, that's about where it ends. And I'm just going to point out some of the differences between last year's team and this year's team, okay? So last year, opposite Nick Bosa at right end, I think they did a little tag team with Cleveland Farrell, who was a former high number one pick with the Raiders who kind of flamed out. And then they also mixed in Randy Gregory, who was like a kind of a well-known journeyman, defensive end, who's had some success here and there. So they've replaced those two with Leonard Floyd, who is an even older veteran, I think, who's a journeyman guy who, yes, he's had some success. Yes, he can still play at a high level at times. But if he's going to be playing a majority of snaps at defensive end, I think that guy can be had. Then let's talk about Eric Armstead being gone and being replaced with a guy by the name of Malik Collins, who's he looked to be a kind of a bigger guy, kind of more of a true nose, even though he's playing on a 4-3 front. But that's clearly, for me, a downgrade. Eric Armstead, at least as of last year, was one of the best defensive tackles in all of football. Malik Collins is a downgrade. So again, I think in this game we can run the ball on the inside. The way I talked about not testing Dexter Lawrence last week, and I feel like that actually didn't prove to be that true necessarily, because once we started wearing that defensive line down, even with Lawrence playing at the high level that he was, we were still able to run the ball very effectively, even on the inside. And so I expect that to continue, because I think we have a quality run blocking line. And so I think this 49ers defensive line can be had. And I think that their aggressiveness can be taken advantage of, particularly Bosa, who a lot of times is so obsessed with the pass rush, doesn't always play disciplined and stay in his lanes and clog the gaps. And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here to do some like, some oversized lines, some like counters, and just you're going to be using the 49ers aggressiveness against them. I think we're going to get some really nice chunk runs out of this game. So another guy, so we know that Dre Greenlaw is not back yet, right? He had that really unfortunate Achilles injury in the Super Bowl, like coming off the sideline. It was so bizarre. They've replaced him with Devondre Campbell, who is a solid veteran linebacker, mostly good against the run. He's like kind of a tackling machine kind of a guy. He comes nowhere near Dre Greenlaw in terms of talent. So for me, that's another downgrade right there, just in terms of overall talent, right? Then you have got last year another linebacker they had. His name was Oren Burks. This year they've got Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. Neither one of those guys really moved the needle much, so I'll call that even. Last year at safety they had Tayshaun Gibson. This year now they have Jair Brown. He actually looked pretty good in that first game. He kind of might be on the rise. So that actually may be a little bit of an improvement there. I don't think that Gibson was bad necessarily, but Brown looks like he could be a pretty darn good safety. And then with Hufanga, who was in last year's game, he got hurt later in the year. He, I think, was limited in practice all week long, and I think he's listed as doubtful, so I really don't think he's going to play. We're not going to see him. So they've got a veteran in there by the name of George Odom. That's a guy who can be had. I don't think that... I mean, he's probably more of like a box safety kind of guy, like comes up and helps with tackling. But I think that Jones could outrun him easily if he gets into the second and third level. So yeah, just like I said before, you've got Warner, you've got Bosa, you've got Ward. These are big names. I think that Addison proved last year that Ward can be beat by a good receiver. We have the best receiver in the league in Justin Jefferson, so I think Jefferson can beat Ward all day long. So as long as Darnold's getting the ball out on time and accurately, I think Jefferson's going to burn this guy. So we'll see how it goes. But just like I said before, this defense is living on just name recognition and just the fact that people just believe that the 49ers have a good defense just because they're the 49ers. They're a tough physical team. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's a really great opportunity in this game to run the ball effectively, to just eat clock, to have long, sustained drives. And that kind of brings me to a point that I was just thinking about, and that's this. In order for us to win this game, we require a clean game, okay? You want to win, play clean. That means being efficient, right? Picking up third downs, scoring in the red zone, making field goals when you're in field goal range. You need to be balanced, okay? You need to make sure you're running the ball and running it well. And don't, if you get behind 10, 14 points, don't give up on that, because I think we have a real chance to break off some big runs. I think Jones clearly has that capability, and I think we can run block with the best of them. So don't give up on the run. Keep it going, even if you get down in the game. We need to control the clock, like I said. No errors on special teams. No missed field goals. No botched punts. No letting the Niners get big, punt returns or kick returns, just things of that nature. Let's keep the flags down this time, right? And let's be sound in our tackling, which now moves me over to the offensive side for the 49ers. This is where I'm concerned, okay? And I know I loved what I saw out of the defense last week. I love the mixture of players that we have. And I think that that Coach Flo has a great defensive mind, and I think that he brought a beautiful game plan last year. And I think that Shanahan took that personally, and so I think there's a real chance that Shanahan is. People are calling this kind of like a revenge game. It's like, okay, you want revenge over like a 5 or 6 point loss in a Week 7 game from last year. That's ridiculous. But I think Shanahan in particular took that one a little bit personal, just because I think him and Coach KO kind of know each other and are kind of like from the same tree or whatever. And so I just think Shanahan in particular is going to bring a really interesting offensive game plan in this one. I just really hope that Coach Flo is ready for it and that our players are ready for it, because right off the bat, the difference between Brock Purdy and Daniel Jones is striking, okay? And Brock Purdy, he gets kind of torn down for being like a system guy, just like a game manager type. No way, dude. Number one, he's got way more athleticism than you give him credit for. I was watching the game last year, rewatching it, and I mean, he totally burned Josh Metellus around the corner and had like a 20-yard run at one point in that game. But he is surgical and precise. Like when I talked about earlier in the week about how Daniel Jones would not take the plays that the defense was giving to him, Purdy's going to take those. He's going to hit his back foot. He's going to throw those balls on time. They're going to pick up 6, 7, 8 yards. They're going to get themselves in the short yardage situations. They're going to pound the ball with this Mason kid, who he's also being slandered too. I want to talk about that a little bit. He's coming off a beautiful game, and people were like, "Oh, this guy's a slappy. Who's heard of this guy? He came out of nowhere." No, he's been on. This is his third year now with the 49ers team. Okay, he's been an active guy. He's been on the special teams. He's been picking up anywhere between like 80 and 100 snaps in both of the last 2 seasons. He has been making a name for himself on this team. And then when you go back, and from what I did watch of that Jets game, he is a rock solid runner of the football. He understands how to follow his blocking. He initiates contact. He breaks tackles. This guy is a good, solid runner. And I think this idea that just because McCaffrey isn't in the game, that means that somehow we've gained an advantage, I don't think so. I think that when it comes to running the ball in between the tackles in particular, Mason might even be better than McCaffrey. Really, all you're losing with McCaffrey, and it does hurt part of Shanahan's game planning, right? Because I think McCaffrey is probably as good as there is when it comes to the screen game and just catching balls out of the backfield. I mean, that's really what he excels at. But I think they can use Debo and more of that area, and they can just let Mason just pound the rock on the inside, and he will follow his blocking. He will not try and bounce something erroneously to the outside and take a TFL. He will pick up those few yards. And so this is really a big concern for me, is that Purdy is going to take those checkdowns, okay? He's going to pick up those 5, 6, 7 yards. Then Mason is going to pound the rock. He's going to pick up those first downs, or he's going to get them into like short yardage situations. And then this is where you're really in trouble, because you're like, oh, is that all they have? No, as a matter of fact, it isn't. They have a bunch of huge playmakers on this team. They have Deebo Samuel, they have Brandon Ayuk, they have George Kittle. So as soon as they're just pounding you, and you're just ready for this, you're ready for just someone to step up and make a play, and then boom, they hit you with a big play over the top or some kind of a chunk play, and you're just reeling. And so this is my main concern in this game. We need to play tough, physical. We need to tackle, and we need to have gap integrity. Or lane integrity. The guys need to have a really great game on the defensive side. And I hope Coach Flo's ready, because I think Shanahan's going to bring it. The offensive line, for instance, obviously you have Trent Williams on the left, and the line goes left to right. It goes Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, who's kind of just an average left guard, Jake Brendel, who's just kind of an average center, Dominic Puni, I think I'm pronouncing that right. He's actually a rookie out of Kansas, so I think was a former tackle. They moved him inside. He's at right guard. He had a very nice game in week 1. And then Colton McKivitz, who is actually a right tackle who was kind of on the rise. I think he's improving every year. He's been on the team like maybe 3-4 years now. What I'm hoping for is that I would love it if Coach Flo showed maybe some fake blitzes on Williams' side, and then ended up having those guys back off into coverage, forcing Williams to then maybe look for work and help double team to the inside, or have the line maybe load up on the left, right, and force communication issues between McKivitz and Puni and Brendel, and just hope that there can be some confusion there, because I don't know. I know McKivitz and Brendel have been with the team. Puni, this is his first year, like I said, and so hopefully it can create some just kind of mismatches or communication issues along the line there. So that's what I'm hoping for. Maybe Jonah Williams plays into all this. I don't know, but I'm hoping that they can overload on the left side and maybe play a little bit of trickery over on the right side, and really not allow Trent to just take Grenard or take Van Ginkel or whoever may be over there just completely out of the play. So I hope that there's some mind games being played there. That'd really be awesome. I'm gonna pause here. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties there. I don't know if you guys see that on your end. When I go back and rewatch this, I'll see if I see that. But clearly, I've got kind of like a bad plug somewhere. Anyway, hopefully that doesn't pop up again. I'll keep my eye out for it. So I was talking about the offensive line and how I hope we attack it. Okay, clearly, do I think Stephon Gilmore can hold Ayuk down? Well, if we're getting pressure, to a degree, sure. Do I think that Josh Metellus, who will probably be matched up on Kittle the most, do I think that I think that Kittle will still get catches, and he's great at Yak. So again, Josh needs to be on his game in this one because George is as good as it gets. And then even a guy like a Jawan Jennings, if it is Byron on the outside or if it's Shaq, who knows? They need to be ready for that guy and beware of long plays to him. And then, of course, with Debo's the kind of guy who's going to initiate contact, and he's just going to wear you down. He's just going to hit you all game long. So our corners better be ready to tackle because this guy is going to hurt you. So, yeah, I just I think I don't know if that wraps up kind of like all of my thoughts on the game itself. Just to kind of go back and put some thoughts onto that Jets game. The Niners obviously looked pretty dominating in that one, and I think what was more impressive about it was that even though I feel like some of their, especially on defense, some of their roster changes, maybe downgrades, and so I don't think the roster is quite as strong as it once was. They still play really physical. Like, they still bring the same brand of football. And to go up against a team like the Jets, who also sees themselves as a physical team, to just completely blow them away makes me worry about our physicality and how we match up against that. When it comes to the Jets, so what I'm hoping for is that 49ers defense looked better than it really is, because I think that Nathaniel Hackett might be the worst coach in the league offensively. I have no respect for what he's doing. I don't know why the Jets coaching staff allowed Rodgers to just like handpick that guy. I mean, the way that he was fired so unceremoniously from Denver, and then to just land right on his feet with an offensive coordinator job with the Jets because Rodgers asked you to hire him. At least, I mean, I don't know if there's any proof of that, but that's kind of like what I'm taking away from it. That just strikes me as just, I don't know, that's how you build losers, in my opinion. And then when it comes to Rodgers, so he's like 41 years old. I don't know how old he is exactly. He still throws a really beautiful like floater, like a back shoulder fade, and he's really, I would say, out of any quarterback I've ever watched in my entire life, he might be the one guy who just looks like almost like he's unimpressed out there, like he just like understands everything, like he's just like Neo in the Matrix, like he sees everything and he knows what's going on. He just looks so free and easy and relaxed back there. It's almost like bizarre to watch at times. But one thing I have noticed as his career has progressed is that he doesn't always trust what he sees anymore, because he likes to play outside of the context of the play. He likes to kind of run around and just, play like sandlot ball or whatever. I've noticed that in his early career, I mean, he was really decisive when he would do that. He would run around and he would throw a killer of a pass that would just decimate you. It was such a backbreaker. And you were like, man, this guy, like, how do you stop that? But I've noticed in his later years now, he does. Maybe it's because he doesn't think his arm is as good as it once was, or maybe his body's just not up for it, or what, or who knows. But all I know is that I have noticed him on many occasions look like he's about ready to throw that back-breaking play and then kind of go off of it and then maybe just like run out of bounds or dump it off or whatever the case may be. Something inside of him has changed. He doesn't quite have that same instinct he once had, and it takes away from his greatness, and I think it actually reverts him back to being kind of a middle-of-the-road quarterback. He does have his great moments, obviously. He still throws a beautiful ball, but I just think that that's another guy who's living on name recognition. So when I look at how well the 49ers defense played last week, I'm a little bit skeptical just in terms of what were they facing? Probably the worst play caller in the league and basically an average quarterback, right? And then if you don't really have those things working for you, then yeah, Breece Hall can't really. And he had a little bit of success early. Then they got behind. They had to go away from the run game. They couldn't pass the ball at all. So I think we got a shot. So that I think that for the most part ends my preview of the game. I don't know what else I really haven't talked about. But I'll see. So I'll go ahead and finalize it with a prediction of a score, which, again, I don't really love predicting scores because it's like we don't really know. But I did see that the spread came out at like 6 points, right? I think it's moved in the Vikings direction a little bit. I think it's at like 5.5. When I did my own picks, and we'll get to those in just a sec, I actually had the Niners as a 10-point favorite. And so if I were to stick with the idea that the 49ers were going to win by 10, I actually don't believe that. Now, I don't necessarily think the Vikings are going to win, even though they're at home, but I think we're going to keep it close. I'm going to go ahead and say my final prediction for this game is going to be 49ers 28, Vikings 24. Now, one last note after telling you what I think the score will be is I want to say this about the national media, is that they want to bury us, okay? They don't like our team. They don't like Sam Darnold. They don't want us to be contenders. They want the 49ers to come into Minnesota and stomp us so that way they can go onto their televisions or go to their desk in front of the television, right after the game and be like, told you so. Told you the Vikings were frauds. Told you the 49ers were awesome. Told you this was going to happen. They want to bury us. And what I'm hoping for, if we can't at least come out with a win, is I want the Vikings to prove they can stand toe-to-toe with a team like the 49ers and show that when they go up against the very best teams in the NFL, that they can beat them too. Because, yeah, you're right. It doesn't show a ton if you're just trouncing teams like the Giants, who I thought quite possibly were the worst team in the league going into that game. So let's have a good showing. Let's show up in this game. Let's meet their physicality, and let's force them to beat us, okay? So we're closing in on 50 minutes. We're at about 47, and I still have my picks to get to, so let me pull that up. And I didn't have my spreadsheet ready. I got to admit, I wasn't nearly as prepared for this show as I normally have been, and I apologize for that. I've been kind of scatterbrained this week. I don't know what's been up, and I actually no, I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to tell you. So on the last episode I did, I actually said that I thought that Miami was going to win the game, but I thought that Buffalo was going to cover. I had the spread at that time as Miami favored by 2.5 at home. Obviously, Buffalo won convincingly. Which means that I got the straight up pick wrong, and I got the against the spread right. So that lands me right now. I'm at 13-4 straight up. I'm at 11-6 against the spread. Okay, and just a side note on that game, that hit that Tua took, scary. I mean, why aren't these guys wearing the Guardian caps? I don't understand it. Protect your brain, guys. Seriously, there's no reason not to. Who cares how it looks? Just wear it. So who knows if Tua even plays again? If he does, boy, that's a tough one. As a football fan, yeah, of course you want Tua back on the field. As a human being, Tua's got a long life ahead of him, and I say, Tua, do what's right for yourself, man. Take care of yourself. So let's get into these picks. We got about 10 minutes left. Okay, first up, and again, these spreads might be old. I don't know. I looked at them maybe like 3 or 4 days ago, and I know the spreads change and stuff, but it's like, oh well, I didn't go back and change them. Here's what I've got. We've got Cleveland. No, we're gonna do the mascots. We're gonna go Browns at Jaguars. Okay, the Jaguars are favored by 3 at home. I've got a huge spread in this one. I see the Jaguars clearly better than the Browns. I actually have my spread at the Jaguars by 19 points. So I have the Jaguars winning this one easily, both winning and covering the spread. Next up, we have Colts at Packers. Now, because of the Jordan Love situation, Malik Willis is starting this game. The Packers are actually home dogs by 3 points. And I actually have my spread simply because I still think the Packers have a good quality team that is a little bit better than the Colts. And plus, we don't really know what to expect from Richardson coming into this game. We know he's a great athlete, but it's going to be in Green Bay. That's a tough situation to play in for anybody. So my spread came out at the Packers by 7. So that actually gave me a difference of Packers by 10, right? Because they got the 3 plus the 7. And so I'm taking the Packers. I'm taking those points. I'm taking the Packers to win. And so I actually didn't include them in my Fermented Five, which I will get to in a minute. Because I don't bet on teams that I consider to have a bad quarterback. And so with Malik Willis, there's no way I'm putting money on the Packers. And in fact, you know what? In the past, or in my first week, I didn't do the Fermented Five until the very end, and I actually had the Jaguars as one of my picks. So keep those guys in mind. Okay, next up we have Saints at Cowboys. This one's interesting. We got the Cowboys favored by 6.5 at home. My spread came out at Dallas by 5. So interestingly enough, I do have Dallas winning. However, I have the Saints covering that spread. Okay, next up we have Giants at Commanders. This one's going to be fun. We have the Commanders favored by 1.5 points at home. My spread actually came out Commanders by 10, so I have Commanders easily winning and covering that spread. Next up, we have Jets at Titans. Titans are actually giving 3.5 points at home to the Jets. Interesting, but fair. My spread actually came out Jets by 5, so I do have the Jets taking those points, winning the game, and covering that spread, or taking those points and winning it. Anyway, then we have Raiders at Ravens. No, hold on, I'm gonna wait on that one. That's one of my Fermented Five. I got a huge spread on that one. Okay, Chargers at Panthers. Panthers giving 6.5 points at home. They should be clearly. So my spread is I have the Chargers by 12.5, which means I have the Chargers taking those points, winning that game. Next up, we have Seahawks at Patriots. This is kind of an interesting one. I am always really intrigued whenever West Coast teams travel to the East Coast, but the Patriots are actually giving 3.5 points at home. I've noticed there's a lot of there wasn't that many home dogs in week 1. There's a lot of home dogs this week. So the Patriots are giving 3.5 points. My spread actually came out Seahawks by 5, so I do have Seahawks taking those points and winning the game. Then we have the 49ers at the Vikings, like we talked about. The original spread that I looked at was Vikings giving 6 points at home. My spread came out 49ers by 10, so I have the 49ers winning and taking those points. Or covering that spread, actually. Yeah, so sorry, let me just backtrack a little. Sometimes I get a little bit lost when I talk about the betting lingo. Niners winning and covering. Seahawks winning and covering. Chargers winning and covering. Jets winning and covering. Packers winning and covering. No, they're at home. Okay, anyway, back to it. Buccaneers at Lions. Lions are favored by 7 points at home. My spread's at 13, so I've got Lions winning and covering. Okay, then we've got Bengals at Chiefs. There's this big fiasco with Burrow. Something about his wrist, something about him not being able to hold a Gatorade bottle with one hand. Who knows? If I were a Bengals fan, I'd be a little bit scared, though. But the Chiefs are favored by 6. My line is Chiefs by 10, so I've got Chiefs winning and covering. Then we have Bears at Texans. I really don't like the Bears. I hope they get destroyed. Houston by 7 at home. My spread is 10, so I've got Houston winning and covering. Okay, now to the Fermented Five. I already talked about Jacksonville. I got Jacksonville winning and covering, okay? Next up, we've got Raiders at Ravens. I love the aesthetic of that game, but the Ravens are going to kill them. So the Ravens are favored by 8.5 at home. My spread is the Ravens by 25. That's my biggest line of the week. So I've got the Ravens winning this one going away. I got them winning it by like 3 scores. So a clear win and cover. So then my next one is actually the Rams at the Cardinals. They're taking this Puka Nacua injury way too seriously. McVay is a much more talented offensive mind than to have a receiver out for the game and just have that completely take him out of his offense. How the Cardinals are getting or giving 1.5 in this, I was like, I'll take that all day long, because my spread actually came in. I have the Rams As a top 10 team, I have them clearly better than the Cardinals. My spread came out at Rams by 20, and so I expect the Rams to beat the Cardinals by 3 scores. So I'm taking those points and I'm giving the Rams the win. Then I have the Steelers at the Broncos. This is another one. Now, in this case, so last week they actually were getting 3 points against the Falcons. In this game, the Broncos were actually giving 2.5 points at home, but my spread is the Steelers by 11. So I have the Steelers just winning and also covering that spread. And then finally we have the Falcons at the Eagles. And I think I saw somewhere where somebody thought that the Falcons were going to pull an upset in this one. And I have to laugh a little bit at the idea of people thinking that Kirk Cousins is going to take a team into Philadelphia and win on Monday night. It's like, have you not been watching for the past 10 years? So the Eagles are favored by 6.5 at home. My spread is the Eagles by 17. I've got the Eagles winning easily. Winning easily and covering the spread. So again, my Fermented Five. Jacksonville winning and covering, Baltimore winning and covering, the Rams taking that 1.5 and winning that game, the Steelers winning and covering on the road, and then the Eagles winning and covering at home. And we're just shy of an hour, so I'm probably going to cut us off just a little bit short, but we almost made it to an hour, right? And hopefully those technical difficulties don't show up in the video, but if they do, I'm probably going to post it anyway because it was like 15 seconds of nonsense. Who cares? So really, I think, as always, my final thought, other than, again, saying, please give me a thumbs up. Please give me not a prescription, but a subscription. As I'm trying to build this channel, I'm going to try and keep putting more and more videos out. Hopefully people will start to notice them. They'll start to show up on their feed and they'll click on them and give them a chance. But what I want for our Vikings is not just to win one before I die. No. It is to play vicious and to be victorious. Peace.